Hello everybody, welcome to a special D3D4 football podcast episode previewing the League 2 playoffs. We saw League 2 come to an end with a very dramatic final day where Bristol Rovers clinched promotion by just a matter of goals scored against Northampton Town. A lot of drama at the top of the table, and we saw four sides secure the playoff spots as well, and that's what we're going to preview today. And I'm joined for this playoff preview by David Jenkin, Chris Stringer and Aaron Diskin. Boys, how we doing? We good?
Oh, good.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Have you all struggled like me to pick one winners from this? Because this is incredibly tough, these four.
I've got a winner.
It's just all been close the whole season, hasn't it? So I think anything that we pick, let's be honest, we could all pick entirely different scenarios here, and it will still be not the one. It will be the one we haven't picked. Like this whole playoff race has been mental, and down to these four teams, I mean, all thoroughly deserve it. But then you could make an argument for so many teams this season that deserve it in this league.
Yeah, absolutely. We record this on Sunday the 8th of May. The playoffs get going on Saturday the 14th with the first tie of the second leg the day after as well. It's a very quick turnaround again, but Wembley's on the line for these four sides. And we're going to preview them now and get as much in-depth insight into them as we can. I'm delighted to say we'll be joined by a guest, a fan representing each of the four clubs as well, to provide a little bit more detail as well about the season that they've had to experience with their clubs. A reminder before we get going that this podcast is in partnership with The Big Step, which tackles football's relationship with gambling. There is an excessive presence of gambling adverts within football, and The Big Step continue to do great work to raise awareness about the dangers of gambling and the impact they can have on so many people's lives. We're going to get going, and we're going to begin with the tie between Mansfield Town and Northampton Town. This is the League 2 playoff preview, looking ahead to the tie between Mansfield Town and Northampton Town, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Binch of Mansfield Musings. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Ed. How are you?
I'm very good. How did you find Saturday? It was a home game against Forest Green Rovers, a 2-2 draw. You got the point and secured your playoff spot, and Forest Green ended up getting the title because of the defeat to Exeter. So would you say it was a rather happy day around for both sides?
Yeah, on the whole, definitely. It was very stressful, nerve-wracking up to around the 86th minute when both teams sort of decided to declare, and we spent the last 5 minutes just knocking the ball around the back under no pressure at all, which was rather bizarre when you're thinking one goal either way, changes things for both teams, and you're just hoping they weren't going to suddenly change their minds and, intercept a pass and go for it on goal. But yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking. It was sort of, because obviously we still had hopes of automatic promotion as well, that we still had the chance of that, but that got killed off pretty early on when Northampton and Bristol Rovers both.
What a crazy day that was between those two.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. They both took early leads, so it was just a case of keeping an eye on the other teams and just making sure we got that point, which we did in the end. So yeah, it was an entertaining game.
Yeah, absolutely, and it secured the playoff spot, as we say. I want to try and reflect on Mansfield Town season, but to be honest, I think we need about an hour to do it.
Yeah.
It's been so crazy, but in simplest terms I can do, it began with back-to-back wins, and that what followed was a run of 12 games without a win, which ultimately saw Mansfield sat in the relegation zone, unbelievably, after a 2-1 defeat at Exeter City. And I still can't understand how this has happened. What follows after that is a run of 14 wins in 18 games, including 8 wins in a row, and it takes Mansfield Town out of the bottom two and up into the top places, which they've continued to flirt with for the rest of the season, of course. Is there a moment or time or maybe the arrival of a player that you can pinpoint which is the catalyst for this incredible turnaround beginning?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. During that terrible run, Clough was quite adamant that all we needed was to get our better players back on the pitch, and we had a lot of injuries and suspensions early on. And probably our best player he kept saying we need back is Stephen Quinn, who stupidly got himself a 6-match ban for 2 incidents in the same game. And he came back into the team, and I was thinking, I don't think one player is gonna make a difference to a 12-game winless run. But to be fair, it did, and it can't be underestimated how important he is to the team even still now. If he's not playing and there's no link with McLaughlin down the left, we definitely look a different side. So yeah, there's Stephen Quinn, who, should you be really relying on a 36-year-old to drag you through a season? But we are, to some extent. There was also the arrival of John Joe O'Toole on a free transfer. Obviously, at the start of the season, James Perch fractured his skull, and we got 2 loanees on deadline day who both picked up injuries pretty quickly, or were already injured when they joined. So we had very limited options at centre back. O'Toole came in and he's been an absolute revelation. I didn't fancy him at all coming in because he's got a bit of a reputation as a hothead. It doesn't take much to wind him up, and you can see he plays on the edge for sure. But he's been brilliant, and he's a brilliant footballer as well. I think for League Two. Obviously, you can tell he used to play further up the pitch, very calm in possession, which is at odds with his mentality when he's on the pitch. But he's certainly been a big one. And probably the other thing is Rhys Oates playing up front through the middle, because at the start of the season, Clough was toying with him sort of in a number 10 role at the tip of a diamond, which didn't suit him at all really. And as soon as he Clough put him through the middle, you just thought, right, I see what all the fuss has been about, because he tore up the National League from January onwards last season, and then as soon as he got put, where he can worry the last line of the defence, he looked a different player, and he's our key attacker. So yeah, probably those 3 players have been the key, I would say.
Good to hear. You're entering these playoffs with the league's second best overall home record. The only team with a better record is Tranmere Rovers. It's been a run of just 1 defeat at Field Mill for Mansfield since the 2nd of October. What do you think has caused the Stags to be such a formidable force in home games across this season?
I think the fan. I'm not one who likes to say fans can make a difference, but I think this season that's certainly been the case. Nigel Clough's been. He's been pointing out that all season that the fans have stuck with him, even in the tough times, even those 12 games where we were winless. I think there was a game towards the end of that run against Port Vale at home where we played them off the park. We didn't win; it was 1-1 in the end. We played them off the park, and the fans gave the team a standing ovation, even though it was another game without a win. But you could see the effort from the players, and the performance was starting to come back, and I think that's from that day onwards. It's sort of given the squad right that the fans aren't going to turn here. The fans are going to stick with us if they can see we're giving 100% effort. It's something that they can sort of galvanise them, and they went into the next home game, I think, and won against Tranmere 2-0. And it's just been crazy since then. I don't know. I don't think it's anything to do with the style of play at home or the tactics at home, because they're no different as far as I can see as they have been away from home. So I think it's just become a bit of a fortress, Field Mill, which hasn't really been the case for the last couple of years for sure. But it's certainly become a place I think teams fear coming to.
Let's work from the back with this team. Nathan Bishop in goal has been a star. He's been a loan to Manchester United. He's been excellent. And the back line in front of him has taken quite a lot of different forms over the season, different lineups, different personnel. Who to you have been the main standouts at centre-back and full-back this season? You've already mentioned John Joe O'Toole, but are there any others who have really stood out in that backline field?
I think Ollie Hawkins, when he initially, because we signed him as a striker with the thought that he can play centre-back if needed, and it soon became the case that it wasn't needed, even though he started the season in pretty good goal-scoring form. Through desperation, really, we had to play him there, and I would say from the moment he went back there in October, probably through to January, February, he was just brilliant. He's excellent in the air. He's not the quickest, I think that's fair to say, but anything in the air, he will mop up, and I think you'll probably see him start at centre back against Northampton to combat their strength in set pieces, basically. As far as the other defenders, Stephen McLaughlin has, I would probably say, been our player of the season at left back. Probably, arguably our most creative player as well. I think he's got 7 goals and 9 assists or something like that from left back, not left wing back. There's been a few games where he played 3 at the back, but mostly left back. And obviously he was formerly a winger, and his quality from out wide, dribbling past players, he can create something out of nothing. He's got quality from a dead ball as well around the edge of the box, as you saw at Salford on Sky a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant. Another one you weren't really sure of when he came in. Where's he going to play in the diamond? Because he's a winger, so he soon got shifted out to left back, where he didn't convince early on. But he's been absolutely brilliant. Him and Quinn linked brilliantly together down the left, the 2 Irishmen. He's been absolutely outstanding. Right back's been chopped and changed throughout the season. I think I prefer Elliot Hewitt there than James Perch. Hewitt was probably a very slow start from him. He was playing centre back at the start of the season. I don't think that really suits him. He's probably the tallest defender I've ever seen who can't really head the ball. And he's 6'3" and he stays back from corners, which is really strange. But yeah, he certainly injects a bit of energy down the right hand side compared to Perch. He's getting on a bit in years. He's very calm on the ball. He's very good on the ball. But Hewitt injects that bit of a bit of pace down the right. He gallops forward, which we don't really tend to play down the right that much, which is a strange thing to say. It's very lopsided. So I like Hewitt at right back and McLaughlin at left back, and I would probably say that it's going to be O'Toole and Hawkins at centre back. Perch, very calm on the ball. He suits us when we're going to have most of the ball and we can play out from the back, but I worry a bit about him in the air. If it's him and O'Toole, there's no real dominance compared to a Hawkins or a Rawson. So yeah, I think he'll go with Hawkins and O'Toole at the back.
Yeah, we've spoken about Ollie Hawkins there. He's a very rare player actually that can be quite competent in both a centre back and a striker role, as you say. There's a couple of times I've watched Mansfield and I've seen Ollie Hawkins, and I always think, I wish I could clone you. I wish I could put you in this back line and have you as an option up top as well. And I wonder if you kind of feel the same way sometimes.
Yeah, certainly. It would be a good foil for Rhys Oates because Oates, he's all what's the word I'm looking for? Quick burst of energy. The ball bounces off him a lot, and he's sort of, but once he gets it under control, he can burst past players. Where you feel like if Hawkins was there flicking things on for him or bringing the ball down, allowing us to get a bit further up the pitch, it might help. But yeah, I certainly see what you're saying there with Hawkins. He has had a few games recently where he's played up front on his own, which I don't think is the best thing for him. I think he needs a partner up there, and that's probably led to him not looking as impressive. But it's a good option to have, certainly if you in the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you need to pump balls into the box, just sending him up there is very, very good option to have.
Absolutely. Now, as to be expected with the Nigel Clough team, Mansfield are a squad full of players that can play about 75 different positions, really. Versatility is such a big thing for him. And that midfield unit is no exception. You look at the names in there: George Maris, Stephen Quinn, Kieran Wallace. You've had Ryan Stoker to Birmingham City. There's been George Lapsley. And then, of course, you had the very high-profile loan signing of Matty Longstaff from Newcastle United as well. There is a whole plethora of options in that central unit. Who would you say makes the best midfield setup that Mansfield Town can possibly have?
Well, I think the 2 key names that have to be on the team sheet are Stephen Quinn and George Maris. I mean, we've touched on Quinn, but George Maris for me is probably my favourite Stags player at the moment. He's very calm on the ball. He gets things moving. He's one of the few midfielders who will take a touch and pass into feet rather than trying something too over elaborate. He keeps the ball moving from side to side. He's always available, and he does the hard yards as well. He wins a lot of headers for his size. He puts tackles. He blocks things. And there was a baffling period of about 5 or 6 games in the last month or so where he's been on the bench and he wasn't starting, and I was just thinking, I don't understand how he's not getting in this team. He needs to be on this team sheet. And I'm glad that he's in the last 4 or 5 games. He's now started getting in the lineup again, and I just can't see why you wouldn't have him on the pitch. His contract's up at the end of the season, I think, so I'm hoping that we might manage to keep him, because I think he'll probably have admirers, certainly top of League Two, bottom to middle of League One, if not higher. So yeah, they're the 2 key ones. And then as you say, you've got a lot of other options. But yeah, those are the 2 key names, I'd say.
Have you found Matty Longstaff since signing? Because it was, as I said, very high profile at the time. He'd had a bit of appearances in the Premier League, scored a couple of goals as well. Did you feel at the time it was a real coup of a signing at the time? Or would you say overall he's looked at?
I don't think you can argue with his numbers. I think 6 goals and a few assists since he's come in. You can't argue with those. And that I think Maris and Quinn, you wouldn't really have them down as goal scorers. So I think it's good to have that person who can get in the box, and he's probably got his time, his runs well, arrives late, and he's composed in front of goal. The one thing I would say about him, I think it's affected the dynamism in our midfield, because he's not the quickest. He's very neat and tidy, but when you've got Quinn, Maris and Longstaff, I think it affects their ability to get around the pitch when compared to someone like a Lapsley or an Ollie Clark, who are, a bit more dynamic. They'll charge around, they'll put their foot in, they'll press people. Longstaff can do that, but I feel he gets played around a bit easily. And so I wouldn't say I'm not looking at him thinking, wow, you're outstanding, you should be in the Championship. But as I say, you can't argue with the numbers, and I think on that basis he has to be in the team, because I'm not sure anyone else would be able to get on the end of things in the box. Maybe Lapsley, but he's had a bit of a hit and miss season as well. So yeah, Longstaff, I would say it's worked out well. It's a good signing, but it's not someone where you're blown away and you're thinking, how is he playing in League Two?
Yeah, very interesting to hear. Some of those midfield options that we mentioned have played as part of the Mansfield Town frontline across the season as well. You have Jordan Bowery up there, who was already under contract this summer, but the window that we've had last summer saw the arrival of Danny Johnson from Leyton Orient and Rhys Oates, who was fresh off helping Hartlepool United climb back into the Football League. Now, unfortunately, Danny Johnson hasn't been able to really hit the levels we hoped he could have, but in Rhys Oates and Jordan Bowery, they've certainly contributed well to Mansfield and are currently sat as the first and second top goal scorers in the Mansfield team, respectively. They played together on the final day, 2-2 draw with Forest Green Rovers. Is that something you hope could be utilised again during these playoffs?
Yeah, I hope so. I think Bowery was unlucky to be dropped in the first place when Akins and Murphy came in. On paper, if you saw, I can understand why you would select Akins or Murphy ahead of Bowery based on their past reputations. But Bowery was probably in the form of his career at Mansfield, and he suddenly found himself on the bench, probably through no fault of his own, really. I think he's someone who puts the side before himself. He's completely selfless. He does all the hard yards. He'll run back for you. He can keep hold of the ball. His end product's not always the greatest, which is why he's in League Two, and why he's played in the lower levels for a lot of his career. But he pops up every now and again with an important goal, and I think the fans have really took him to heart this season. I think he was a bit of a boo boy at the start of last season. But yeah, he's someone I like to see on the team sheet. Rhys Oates, as I say, has been incredible. Since he's been playing through the middle, he's just, if he picks up the ball in a bit of space, you're not stopping him unless he miscontrols the ball, basically. So yeah, he's someone. A lot of times in the last few games, he's picked up the ball and the rest of the team's 50 yards behind him, and he'll take on 3 or 4 defenders and he'll shoot from anywhere. He loves getting shots off. He's just so effective, and I think that probably suits Clough when he wants to be a bit more cautious. He can sit the whole team behind the ball and just loop it forward to Oates, and he'll sort of try and do the rest. So yeah, he's worked out as a good signing. Danny Johnson, It's a bit of a weird one. Obviously, he started the season as probably the number one striker, but I just don't think he offers enough off the ball for Clough. I think Clough likes players who will press, who will work for the team, and even get hold of the ball, link play a little. Whereas Johnson, I just see him as a poacher, an ultimate poacher, really, in and around the 6-yard box, anything flashing across. So his chances have been limited, and you could probably say a little bit unfairly he's not had the minutes he could have merited when there's been times over the last 6 weeks ago, particularly when Oates has been injured, where you thought, well, can he really do any worse than the other strikers have been doing in the absence of Oates? But he's just, when he has come on a sub for limited minutes, he's not really grabbed his opportunity, and now he's not even getting on the bench. He wasn't even on the bench for the last 2 games, so I don't know, there's something in training that's, there's a bit of a rift between him and Clough, but I would be surprised if he was here next season, to be honest.
I can give you a lot of stories about risk with players in Nigel Clough, let me tell you that. I can tell you a lot. Now, we're on a Skype call here. We've got a Mansfield Town fan and a Burton Albion fan on this Skype call. I cannot go through this section with you without talking about Lucas Akins. I have to do it. I'm contractually obliged to do it. I feel like he's one of a number of players in this Mansfield team who's got prior experience working under Nigel Clough at Burton Albion. There's a number in this squad who have indeed made the move directly across from the Brewers as well. But looking across the second half of the season, it feels like Lucas Akins and indeed also Jamie Murphy, who's on loan to Midburnian since signing in January, haven't quite hit the heights that I thought they could have following their previous success under Nigel Clough at Burton. Do you think there's any reason why that is? Are they maybe not best utilised in Nigel Clough's Mansfield system?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, first of all. I don't know, because obviously from following yourself on Twitter, and we've had conversations when I've said what to expect from these players. When I've asked you about Akins, so you look at him and you see, well, first of all, what's his best position? He's played in pretty much every position on the pitch, and I've not seen so far probably what's made him a Burton legend. Like his touch is terrible, or has been terrible.
No, that is a fair comment to say. That is a fair comment to say.
He seems to spent most of his Mansfield career so far chasing after his first touch. But what you can't fault is his application, his work rate, and again, I think that's what Clough loves about him. He'll run back all day. He'll come back for corners. He'll head things away. He'll mark the tallest player. He's all about the team. But yeah, as far as his attacking performances have gone, there's been probably 3 or 4 games where he's missed really good chances. It could just be a lack of confidence, I suppose. But yeah, we've not seen the best of him, and I think that, coupled with Bowery being in form and being dropped for Akins, that's sort of not stood him in good stead with the fans. I think the fans have got on his back a bit. But like I say, I'm sure with his reputation that he will turn it around, similar to probably how Bowery has done this season compared to last season. I think he's had injury problems as well, so maybe he's not 100%. But yeah, I think he'll be able to turn it around. He's got a 2.5-year deal, so he's not going anywhere.
It's a very long contract for a player that age.
Yeah, and for that age, yeah, and Clough obviously loves him. So I think he's here to stay, and hopefully, he'll turn things around. But I wouldn't say everyone's everything's against him. Everyone can see how hard he works. So it's just a case of probably scoring a few goals or contributing assists or something along those lines, and that will, just kickstart his career. Jamie Murphy, again, another one, high hopes for. Very slow start, but in the last couple of games, barring Salford away, where I didn't think he was played very well, the last couple of home games he has played well, and he's he scored against was it Crawley or Stevenage we were playing? Crawley, I think it was. A very nice goal. He set up Longstaff's goal on on Saturday, and he's had shots and set up chances for others. So you can sort of see where you're starting to see his quality. I think it's just a case of he's obviously not getting any younger either, and as primarily a winger, when you start to lose that bit of pace when you're a winger, it can be hard to adjust, I suppose. You can sort of see when he picks up the ball, he's not quite backing himself to run at players. He'll come back inside and he'll lay it off. You can see that's perhaps a bit of confidence as well. But yeah, I think Murphy will play, and he does play better when he's with Quinn and McLaughlin as well. They've developed a bit of an understanding. I'd probably be surprised if Akins doesn't play as well, because I think Clough just loves them and trusts them to do a job for the team.
Yeah, I'm not one to superstitions, but I reckon it might have a bit to do with him having 34 on the back. He was number 10 throughout his whole time at Burton Albion, and maybe the number. I'm just making silly theories here, but yeah. On to the game itself. Northampton, the tie. What were your experiences in Northampton during the season? It was a home win for both sides. Are you anticipating a tight contest against Northampton in his playoff semi-final, or do you back Mansfield Town over both legs to make it a fairly comfortable job?
No, I don't think it'll be comfortable. I think it'll definitely be tight. I wouldn't say I'm fearful particularly of Northampton. When you look at the other two sides we could have played, I'd probably been a bit more fearful of those, and particularly with Northampton having the disappointment of the final day where they basically did everything right, but still didn't get promoted. That's got to have, taken its toll a bit, as it did a few years ago when we lost out on the last day to MK Dons and then we had to go into the playoffs. You could sort of see that it had affected the players. As for the two games across the season, I didn't go to the away game, but I think Clough has said previously that was the lowest ebb of this team. It was a dreadful performance. Like we barely mustered a shot, I don't think. And it was, Clough said it was the lowest he's been in his managerial career. So you sort of think they'll be going into that away leg with a bit to prove them, put those ghosts to bed. The home game this season, I thought we absolutely played them off the park. It was only a few weeks ago, a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks. We only won 1-0, and it was from a set piece, which is quite ironic when you play Northampton, as most of their goals seem to come from corners or free kicks. But yeah, we absolutely battered them. I think it should have been 2 or 3-0. So if we can play like that again, I think we need probably a 2-goal lead going into the away leg, because I don't trust our defence away from home. I don't away from home to be able to get away without conceding. But yeah, I think if we can get a 2-goal lead in the home leg, then I'd fancy us going to Northampton. So I think it's that home leg is crucial, especially with our home form across the season. We've really got to make that home advantage count.
Yeah, absolutely. One final thing I want to ask you, Sam, before you go, is there a prediction? I'm not going to get you to predict Mansfield against Northampton, because we know who your allegiance is lying. We know who you're going to back out the two to win it. What I want to ask you about is the other semi-final, Swindon Town against Port Vale. What are you thinking about that tie? Is there one of the two teams you look at and think, if Mansfield were to get to Wembley, I would much rather play them there? Or are you not afraid and just think, bring it on whoever it is?
I wouldn't fancy us against either of those teams, I don't think, personally. But I don't know why I say that, because we beat Swindon at home 3-2. Or 3-1, 3-2 or 3-1. We lost away, but we had a goal over the line which wasn't given, and that was the start, I think, of our bad run. But I think Swindon seem to have a lot of creative flair. They've got McCurdy, they've got Williams, they've got Reed, who you're a bit fearful of. But saying that, we did bully them a little in the home game recently. Port Vale, I think, quite a similar side to Northampton, like very functional. They don't give many goals away. They've probably got a bit more a few more options up front, Proctor and Wilson. I think I'd rather play Swindon out of the two. But yeah, I think Port Vale will probably go to the final, where hopefully we'll be as well. But who knows?
Yeah, good to hear. Sam, thank you very much, and best of luck for the playoffs.
Thank you, Ed. Cheers.
Chris, Mansfield Town. What a rollercoaster of a season they've had, really. Starting it with a lot of expectation, as you normally have with Mansfield Town. They've been trying to get into League One for a number of seasons now. It started horribly, and again we were thinking to ourselves, have Mansfield Town gone and burned us again? Because we've had a lot of expectation of Mansfield Town, felt quite good about them, and it's come backfired, and they found themselves down the relegation zone. Nigel Clough feeling a lot of pressure, but the turnaround and the turn of form to get themselves up in these playoff spots is incredible.
Yeah, you said it's been a roller coaster of a season. I think it's been a roller coaster of sort of 5 years. But at last they've done it. We all know that Mansfield have spent quite a considerable amount of money over the last few years to try and get to these the heavy heights of League One, and finally they've got a chance about it. And I think they've got a good bit of fight about them that they're in with a real shout, I think, this season.
I absolutely think they are. David, is it fair to say, they probably won't like this joke, but is it fair to say they're a bit of a Burton Albion B team at the moment with Nigel Clough as manager? You've got Richard Narty, who appeared for Burton. You've got John Joe O'Toole at the back, who was from Burton. Jamie Murphy was on loan at Burton previously, joining on loan from Hibs this year. They've got Stephen Quinn in there, Kieran Wallace, Lucas Akins as well up top. They've recruited a lot from Burton, but is it fair to say that they've been players worthwhile getting?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think these are all players that are very good at this level, and I think rightfully so that you go with the devil you know rather than the devil you don't. And if Clough is more comfortable with those players because he's worked with them before, then I wouldn't begrudge any manager for going with players that they're comfortable with, especially if they can secure them and build a spine of their team from players that they have prior relationships with. And of course, it just so happens to be that, Burton, funnily enough, is the team that you support, isn't it, Ed? So
I feel a bit of deja vu watching Mansfield sometimes, thinking I've seen you before. What's going on here? But
I feel a little bit of deja vu listening to a pod that doesn't have James talk about Oxford, but instead has Ed talking about Burton. But but it's I agree. But I also feel like I imagine there'll be some more players that they bring in. Not that we're talking about that yet, but yeah, do you know what? I think it's good that they've brought in a number of players that he's familiar with and knows their play style. And actually, it means that the players know the expectation of the manager as well. And I think that's really important to have that sort of relationship. And especially when, if you can bring those players in and start off on a foot like that, get a spine that you're aware of, you can kind of build something really good out of that, which of course they've been able to do sitting in this last playoff place.
Yeah, for sure. Aaron, there's a lot of stars within this season for this Mansfield Town team. They've been very impressed with Nathan Bishop. He's been spending the season on loan for Manchester United, playing in goal for the club. Stephen McLaughlin in left back has maybe been the best left back in the league. Nicky Cadman would run him close, but McLaughlin's had a big part of the creativity in this Mansfield team as well. You go into midfield where George Lapsley's been excellent. There was the very high profile loan signing of Matty Longstaff from Newcastle United during the January window. He's had a good goal scoring impact as well. And Rhys Oates, who joined from Hartlepool in the summer, has had a terrific season for them as the club's top scorer.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, they've got quality in every key area of the pitch you need to be successful in. And I think one thing I've noticed watching a fair bit of Mansfield this year is they seem to be a very cohesive unit, and they all seem to be working together and backing each other, and sort of like they're going out on the pitch for each other. And I think that's important when you get to these sort of games. And I think they're reaping the rewards of, like you say, Nigel Clough was under a lot of pressure at the early strands for the season, and for a club of their expectation, it could have been, and it's been seen to have done, where teams have got rid of a manager for a bad run or bad thing. So I think they're reaping the rewards of sticking with the manager, backing him well, granted, but the players seem to want to be playing for each other. They seem to want to be playing for the manager, and it's reaping the rewards, really.
Yeah, very good example of showing patience with your manager even in difficult times and seeing the potential that could come out of that. Mansfield, of course, could be getting promotion. This is the League Two playoff preview, looking ahead to the tie between Mansfield Town and Northampton Town, and I'm delighted to be joined by Northampton fan Brendan Walsh. Brendan, how are you doing?
I'm about as good as I can be after Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, we have got to bring up Saturday, haven't we? It was a very strange occasion, really. I think, from a Northampton perspective, we have to say it was a job well done at Barrow, but who really saw that coming at Bristol Rovers?
I mean, the really upsetting thing is, on What a Load of Cobbers podcast, we even said, like, do you know what, if they have a 5-6 goal swing and we win, then they deserve to go up. It just, you never thought really in your wildest nightmares that would happen. I read somewhere earlier today that Bristol hadn't scored 7 goals in a game since 1964. And we were 3-0 up with 25-30 minutes gone. So, I mean, there's been preemptive and counting your chickens and all that. But when you're 3-0 up and the other team's got to win by 5 clear goals,
yeah,
I don't think anybody saw it swinging that way round. So it was a gut punch. In a weird way, you kind of wish you'd lost, and then you could be a bit angry at the team, but you go again. But we didn't do anything wrong. It feels we've not punished, but you know what I mean. We've not gone up automatically. We're 4 points off the champions. Been in and around there all season, and then had it snatched away really out of our control. It was a very cruel way to not go up, but we're just hoping that the players use that now. It would be even worse to now not go up and look at that. So they've got to use it as fuel, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It is painful to see the missing automatics, but as you say, we're not done yet. There is still the possibility Northampton Town could be in League One next season through the method that you got it 2 years ago, of course, through the playoffs as well.
Yeah, and we've said before about that season, the Keith Curle, very, very different manager and very different football. And to be honest, we were on our way out of the playoffs when COVID hit, and we ended up, I think we were the last place team in the playoffs that year on points per game. We had Cheltenham, and they even beat us 2-0 at our place. We went to theirs, won 3-0, amazing performance, and then did extra 4-0 at Wembley. And we all said the 2 best games we played all season were that second semi-final and the game at Wembley. So
it was, count.
And in a weird way, it was like that was the same season, I think, when we went quite deep into the FA Cup, and there was quite a cup mentality in that side. There were games that we were going to drop points and everything, but when the chips were down, they performed. I don't want to get drawn into predictions too early on a playoff soap this time round, but this is a much, much better side than that Curl side that went up. And, if somehow we could play the 2 teams, I think, if it was over 46 games, John Brady's Northampton would be a better side. But that Keith Curle team was just built to smash and grab and win when the chips were down. So we'll see if we can do it this time round. But it feels very strange, like you said, to be looking at trying to go up the same way when we're leaps and bounds a better team than we were 2-3 years ago. So it's quite a weird one.
Yeah, I have some bad memories of that smash and grab Keith Curle team as a Burton Albion fan in that FA Cup.
Yeah, it's the same year.
Yeah.
Great game to watch that though.
I'm sure it was to you. I beg to differ, to be honest. But let's go back to last summer. Northampton had been freshly relegated from League One. John Brady had overseen the final third or so of that season and had been given the permanent manager role at the Cobblers in May 2021. Coming into this new campaign, what was your feeling? Were you confident that Northampton, despite the relegation, could challenge for an immediate return to the third tier?
I think, to be honest, I'm renowned as a very positive Cobblers fan. I'll always see the glass half full. We've not ended up like Bury or these other teams that lose their clubs and everything. I was like, look, we're back in the stadiums now. There's no COVID. As long as we don't get relegated, I'm happy to just be watching Cobblers again. And I think there was people that were saying we should be in playoffs and everything, but I was like, if we gave that a go, I can't really ask for any more. We had, this is Brady's first full-time professional club management role. It was a new backroom staff, really, all but 1 or 2 players, whole new squad, and a lot of them were kind of, risks. So I was just very happy to be going to the games again, to be honest. And the season started off very strongly for us. But then if you look at teams like Bristol, for example, they started with 6 losses. and have come out of nowhere really. Mansfield the same, like charged back up the table. So it felt very strange. It felt like the bubble was going to burst at some point all season, and there was maybe periods of 2 or 3 bad results when I think everybody thought, okay, well this is it, we're going to fall away now. So I'm really proud of the squad, to be honest. I think like even the most positive people were just thinking playoffs would be a result. We've really unearthed some gems in the transfer window that I'm not sure many people would have picked out, on paper before the season. And the backroom staff was the thing I was the most positive about. Brady, who loves the area, who loves the club, like he'd been involved in it for a long time, knows all the non-league clubs around Northampton. Richards, who's obviously Mark Richards as a coach, is a club legend. Colin Calderwood to bring in some, he's also a fan of the area and a bit more experience than Brady. We've got the right backroom staff, I think, now to go long term. It's a lot of the time you go back to our Chris Wilder days when we won the league. You can be a good team in the lower leagues, but you're only, a good season away from having it all picked apart from the teams higher up. So I looked at this team and I was like, look, if we can take the first positive step this season, then there's a long-term belief here. And I think Cobblers fans now have to look at, regardless of what's happened on the last day, this season's been a positive step. And regardless of what happens in the playoffs now, we've got a really good, base foundation for a good club moving forward. And whether we get promoted in 2 weeks' time or in a season or 2 seasons' time, I think we've got some longevity here, which is what we've needed for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been a very positive season from Northampton perspective, I have to say. And as you mentioned, some of the other teams in this playoff and promotion battle which has been so crazy over the season, they've kind of come into it later in the season after struggling initially, whereas Northampton have been up there throughout the whole campaign. There's only been a handful of weeks where they weren't actually in those top 7 places. I think their lowest was 14th following a couple of consecutive defeats in early October, but because it was still so early into the season, they were back up in the top 3 again within a couple of weeks after 3 consecutive wins. And of course, despite spending all that time, as we've mentioned before, the race to confirmation through automatic promotion did go down to the final day, and they suffered that aforementioned heartbreak in that game at Barrow. I suppose the big question a lot of people have now about Northampton is, what do you think the mentality of this squad's going to be ahead of the playoffs? Do you anticipate perhaps that the pain of missing out could impact them more than they want to ahead of this playoff campaign, or could it maybe add an extra incentive and motivation to get over the line?
I think it adds an incentive, to be frank about it. I think out of all the teams left, Swindon is the one I don't really want at Wembley. We didn't beat Swindon in the regular season. It was 1-1 at ours earlier on in the season, and we actually lost 5-2 there on New Year's Day, albeit we had a bit of a COVID-ravaged squad. But they're the ones that kind of scare me, just because they're open, expansive play, will score goals against anyone. And we've had, a solid defence that's been pretty unshakable 90% of the season. I think the pain should be a reminder for them, but also what a few people are forgetting is we were written off out the playoff spots. We were even written off when we were third, and what happened on the final day by a lot of journalists and media. It was very strange. But at the end of the day, we've won 4 of our last 5 and drew with Exeter. Obviously, we're going for the title in the last 5 games. And we named pretty much an unchanged side in that side. A lot of people forget, and maybe they're not Cobblers fans, that we lost our starting striker. He was recalled from his loan and sent to League One in January. We had really bad COVID outbreak, in the middle of a big fixture pile-up. And it's only actually recently, I'd say the last month, 6 weeks, where some players came back from injury and Brady could name an unchanged strongest 11. And we found the form at the right time in those last 5 games. And I think we're the club with the momentum. A lot of people will see what happened on the last day as it takes your momentum away. But I think we have to look at it as we've gone, exactly like Brady said after the game, we've gone away at Barrow and scored 3 goals, which no one had done against Phil Brown. We took a point and should have won really against Exeter at ours. We're the informed team, I think, in the playoffs. So as long as the squad remind themselves of that, they're not the underdogs. They don't have to feel sorry for themselves because what happened. They have to go out and it's actually in their control now. They don't need to rely on Scunthorpe or Bristol or anyone else. Just go out and do what you've done the last 5 games and we should be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I want to talk about the Northampton team, and there's so much to praise with it. And I'm going to begin with a defence that has provided such a strong foundation for this promotion push that Northampton Town have had. The centre-back partnership of John Guthrie and Fraser Horsfall have not only contributed massively to Northampton's joint high total of 21 clean sheets this season. They've also combined for 17 league goals, of course. Horsfall's got 9, Guthrie's got 8. It's only Sam Hoskins and Mitchell Pinnock that have goal tallies which either match or beat those. They're one of the highest scorers in the league. What is it about the system under John Brady that's made that defensive pair so good in both penalty boxes?
To be honest, I think you can go back, pretty much as far as the Wilder days. We've always had a centre back that gets nearly 10 goals. Like Charlie Goode, who obviously we sold to Brentford when we went up 2 years ago. He had 6 or 7 goals, I want to say. Aaron Pierre before that always had 5 or 6 goals a season. Ash Taylor is a very divisive figure amongst the Cobblers fans. The year he won Player of the Season, I think he had 7 or 8 goals. If you've got good, your centre backs in League One and League Two should be the best headers of the ball. And therefore it really comes down to the deliveries. And under Wilder and Neil, we had amazing set piece coaching and we had very specific approach to it. Under Keith Curle, it was very, very set piece focused. I mean, he told a friend of mine who was in the squad at the time that he wanted 50% of their goals to come from phase 1 or 2 of a set piece. Mm-hmm. So they targeted those. I think with Brady, it's honestly as simple as Guthrie and Horsfall are very good in the air, and Mitch Pinnock has got the best delivery, I think, in the league. Like, he's an absolute wizard on a dead ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that defence as well throughout the whole of the season, up till the final day, has been Liam Roberts, who, of course, picked up a red card in that win over Barrow. He's going to be suspended to the first leg. Do you think that could be a bit of a blow to Northampton's players, or do you look at Johnny Maxted and think there's very suitable cover there for that first leg at least?
I won't lie, it does fill me with it's one thing I'm a bit nervous about. I think Roberts obviously won Player of the Season for us. I was a big fan of Pinnock from week 1, and I argued it should have been him really, but I think it's been said a lot that if we had him in League One, we would have stayed up. Like, we never had a keeper that did anything extraordinary last season and dug us out of stuff. Roberts, whether we've been winning games or losing games, is like he's pulled stuff off that he shouldn't. Like, he's a top keeper, probably the best Cobblers keeper I've seen in the time I've been going, the last 10, 15 years. Like, I can't remember anyone pulling off some of the saves he has. And that's the only thing I think with Maxted. He hasn't played since the League Cup where we went out to Wimbledon, and he got brought in, obviously, playing some squad players in the Cup. It was 0-0, dead game, and then the 90th minute, someone's had a very speculative shot from 40 yards out, straight down his throat, and he muffed it through his legs, and we didn't see him again. So I'd like to say, he hasn't got a mistake in him. He'll just do what he has to do, and he might not do anything extraordinary. But the last time we saw him, he did choke one up. So it's something I'm a little bit wary of. Yeah. Mansfield are an aerial threat themselves from set pieces. We've seen from the games we played them this season. I think Maxted, the only thing he's maybe got on Roberts is he's a bit more physical, and he should be able to get in amongst the bodies more. But yeah, Roberts this season, like I said, Player of the Season, it's definitely going to be a miss not having him. I just hope that Maxted isn't called into action too often. That's all. Yeah,
indeed. I suppose there's a bit of a nice narrative potential as well with Maxted, because if I recall correctly, he was the keeper for Exeter when Northampton beat them at Wembley 2 years ago as well.
He was, yeah. And if I'm honest, I think a lot of Northampton fans would deny it, but Maxted was brought in on a 2-year deal, Roberts on a 1. Maxted was the starting keeper at Exeter, like you said, in a promotion-chasing team, and had always been very rated there. I think he was brought in to be the 1. And Roberts was a backup. Even though Roberts was a starter at Walsall, he didn't come with really any pedigree. And Brady let him compete for the spot early on in the season, and there was a bit of shirt swapping and trying them out in different games. And I'd say after Max had choked that one in the League Cup, Roberts took it and didn't let go. There was a couple of really good games early on, and Max just didn't take his chance. So, like you said, a nice narrative for him to kind of a bit of retribution. And Roberts is only on a 1-year deal, so if he is plucked away from us this summer, Maxted will want to make sure that there isn't, he's not the number 2 when whoever we have to sign does come in. Do you know what I mean? So he's got a lot to play for, as does everyone, but especially Maxted.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen quite a few systems used by Northampton over the season. Midfield's played a very pivotal role regardless of the setup. 2 of the standouts in there from just the base numbers alone, and the ones who will catch the eye probably for opposition fans, have been Sam Hoskins and Mitchell Pinnock. Pinnock we've mentioned already. He was a summer pickup previously up in Scotland at Kilmarnock, much like we had with Nicky Kabamba and Aaron McGowan, who also, and he's undoubtedly had a fantastic season, whether in attacking midfield, forward or out wide. And then you have Sam Hoskins, who's wrapping up his 7th season at Northampton Town now. He joined back in 2015, and this season has been his most productive yet. What kind of legacy is Sam Hoskins going to leave at Northampton Town when his time at the club comes to an end?
A weirdly divisive one. He's like Marmite with Northampton fans. I think because he is so good, but the thing he lacks is his clinicalness. Like like you said, this season output wise, he's had his best, but honestly, he could have had twice that number. He is prone to missing very good chances, and then he's that very stereotypical League Two player where he'll miss the 6-yard finish or the 1-on-1, and then he'll wrap one in from like 35 yards with the outside of his boot. It's as good to watch as it is frustrating, because you get the easier chances probably more often, to be honest. He's turning a little bit more of a poacher this season, but he also benefits very much from who he's playing around. I think Curl misused him a little bit, and had a tendency to play him at wing back a lot of the time and ask him to do a different role for the side. But we played this 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, and most recently when we've had him with Apare and Epia, I think Hoskins benefits from that, and he's able to arrive in the box in better places and a little bit more space. So I don't know. I think my personal opinion, I think he gets an unfair shout at Cobblers. If he was more productive and he scored the goals he created, he wouldn't have been with us for 7 seasons. He'd be playing in the Championship of the Premier League. So I just think he's a very good player for our level, and I appreciate his loyalty, and I'd love to see him get 10 years and get a testimonial. It's very rare nowadays anywhere below the Premier League to see anyone do that. So I've always kind of defended him, I think, but watch him now go miss a pen in the playoffs and punish.
I thought you were positive.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. He has that in him. He did it a couple of times in League One last season. I think he was our top goal scorer, but he missed the penalty in injury time against Wimbledon, which, arguably could have kept us up. So, he's another one. Like he's prone to his mistakes, but more often than not, he gets it right. It's just when he tends to get it wrong, it tends to be pretty bad.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the players you mentioned there as well. Louis Apire, Josh Epia. Epia's on loan from Leicester. Apire was a sign from Dundee United, I recall correctly, during the January window. The front line of Northampton maybe has, in terms of goal output, looked the weakest part over the season as a whole. We did have Keane Atete, of course, as you mentioned, in the first half of the season, who was excellent on from Tottenham. He was at Cheltenham Town for the second half of this season. How important do you think the impact's been of Louis Apire and Epia since they've signed?
Yeah, I think this was what I was trying to allude to, really. Like, a lot of people look at the goals scored and all the chat in January was how we were so set piece reliant. But like I said, it wasn't like under Carl where you felt like we were playing percentages and trying to get set pieces and score from them. It was like our good attacking play was resulting in corners and free kicks, and then they were going in instead. And then we lost to Tete, who, when you play with one striker up top, you have to ask them to do a lot. And he was quick and skillful, but he was very strong and brilliant at holding the ball up. He's a hold-up type striker, I think, really. And when we brought in the, inverted commas, replacements, we signed a lot of attacking reinforcements in January. It took a while for them all to gel. They all on paper were very good signings, but they were only available and willing to come to Northampton because, maybe they weren't fit enough, or they weren't getting game time, or they were being used in the wrong position. And then the last 4 or 5 games where we put those results together and scored a lot of goals and created a lot of chances has all been, whether I think we had to make a few changes because of injuries, but the front three has been Epia, Apare and Hoskins for all of them. And we're starting to see, it took, even a couple of months to bed some of them in, figure out what they do well and tweak the system. But now it's starting to reap benefits. I think if we'd have kept Atete, or we'd have had this front three from the start, I don't think we'd have been even pushing for playoffs. I think we'd have been where Exeter and Forest Green were, maybe even beyond, because losing that in the middle of the season was something that I don't think a lot of rival fans or media or journalists or whatever really gave Brady or us any credit for. Having to overcome that was quite difficult. Yeah,
for sure. 2 more players I want to give a mention to. A couple of midfielders who have been near ever present throughout the season, Jack Sowerby and Sean McWilliams, a little bit deeper, especially when compared to Mitchell Pinnock, for instance. How would you assess their impact they've had on the team this season?
I think Sean McWilliams is the most important player for Northampton. He might not go up the top of the stats like Mitch Pinnock or even get the plaudits like Liam Roberts, but I think I only ever remember it's so rare we all mentioned it once that McWilliams had a really bad game. He is that like James Milner. He's obviously a lot younger, but he never puts in a bad performance. It's 7, 8 out of 10 minimum. And in League One and League Two, when you need a battle in the midfield, you need to pick up seconds, you need an engine, you need a bit of nastiness sometimes. That's McWilliams all over. He's a box-to-box midfielder who doesn't really get the goals, maybe. I think he's only got 1 or 2 goals for Northampton, but for me, he is the key to how we tick and how we win the ball back and how we defend and how we press. He's the key. And another, the last 4 or 5 games, he was supposedly injured and out for the season. And somehow, it surprised everyone, he made a miraculous recovery. And since he came back into the side, we hadn't lost. So for me, he's the key to the playoffs. If it was him out and not Roberts, I think I'd be a lot more pessimistic than I am. And Sowerby, I mean, he was in and out the side. He also had his injury problems, and I think we played around a lot with the midfield. It was never really settled. And then he comes in and he's quite a calming influence next to McWilliams. McWilliams runs everywhere at a million miles an hour, flying into tackles, picking up balls. Sowerby tends to be get on the ball, try and slow it down, compose it. And so in that way, they kind of work well together. I don't think Sowerby's irreplaceable, but I think he's been very good for Cobbers this season. I'd be interested to see him kick on and try and add a few more like assists or goals to his game, really. But he's kind of just sat in McWilliams' shadow and fed off him, really, which, to be honest, is all he needed to do. But he could do more, I think, but not a bad player at all.
On to the game then, Mansfield Town. What were your experiences of them during the season? Are you anticipating a tight contest between these two over these 2 legs, or do you have that confidence in Northampton to comfortably see them off over both legs of the tie?
I think you have to be wary of anyone you play in the playoffs. Like we said, we went up from the last playoff space 2 years ago. Every team's there on merit. Clough is a very good, very experienced manager. We know a couple of the players. John Joe obviously is an ex-Cobbers legend, playing centre back there at the moment. I didn't go to the away game this season. I did it a couple of seasons ago. I was at the home game, obviously, and they were very tight games. It was very scrappy, and it's one of those like it could go either way. But my only hope is that Mansfield's form going into the playoffs has been a bit patchy and hit and miss. They did beat us back in April, I think it was. It was 1-0 away, and that at the time looked like it dented our playoff hopes. But then they went and lost Forest Green the next game, and lost a couple more in their playoff run. So they showed that they are human. They're kind of consistently inconsistent in my opinion. You don't really know what Mansfield you're going to get. If they turn up and they play their best, we'll have to be at our best to get anything from it. So really, I think it's going to be a cracking tie. I think, to be honest, this will be the hardest game of the lot. Is Mansfield. Swindon could go either way and be a bit of a humdinger if we see them in the final, and Port Vale as well. But the team I think that'll be the hardest test for this squad will be Mansfield.
Yep, so good to hear. One final thing I want to guess, we've touched on it briefly. I'd like to get your thoughts on the other playoff tie, Swindon Town against Port Vale. I think you've already said out of the two, you'd rather not face Swindon at Wembley, but would your mindset, if Northampton were to go there and you saw whoever out of Swindon or Port Vale got there, you'd think bring it on regardless?
Well, yeah, you have to have that mentality, I think. Swindon is one of those, like, it's a personal thing. It's not a fan base I particularly enjoy. It would really hurt to lose to Swindon at Wembley, but I just think the way that they play football, like we lost there 5-2 on New Year's Day, but you could go and beat them 5-2 and you could lose 5-2. It's just, I don't really like it. The games never really reflect, the stats maybe. It's always an odd one, and they've got the quality of a League One side in places in their squad. Like Johnny Williams in League Two is ridiculous. Harry McCurdy is obviously kind of broken out this season as well, and you never quite know what you're going to get with him. So yeah, they're the one that I wouldn't want to play them just because I feel like you could play pretty well and lose 3-0 against them quite easily. So they're my dark horse. I think Port Vale are a different kind of side. I think Port Vale could edge them out like 1-0, and then it will be quite a tight affair at Wembley. But we've had wins against Port Vale this season, so that wouldn't scare me as much as Swindon.
Excellent. Brendan, thank you very much and best of luck for the playoffs.
Cheers. Thanks for that, mate.
Northampton Town have been a bit of a contrast to Mansfield, I suppose, whereas Mansfield built their way up towards the top of the table. Northampton have spent the entire season, David, up at the top of the table. You were obviously quite bullish about them at the start of the season. I still have to apologise to you now about having Northampton with high expectations when I probably didn't myself, to be honest. Cobblers come into this on the back of a very difficult final day. They did everything they really thought they could, getting a 3-1 win away at Barrow, what they needed, the 3 points. But that Bristol Rovers big win over Scunthorpe means they've missed out by virtual goals scored. Do you think it could maybe impact them heading into this race? They're going to be without Liam Roberts as well, who's suspended to the first leg after a red card.
They will be, but I think this is very much going to be about how they come away from that and how they manage that. But I don't entirely think that it'll put them off too much. If anything, I think it could have the opposite effect where it might motivate them a little bit more to push on. As you say, I've been very much a fan of this team for the whole of this season. And I honestly find it hard to not back them in this one, if I'm honest. Little spoiler there. But just because I really like this team. I really do. And it just seems to be goals from everywhere. They've got so many players that have been contributing. Like, Sam Hoskins has been wonderful this year. Mitch Pinnock has been great. Fraser Horsfall has been wonderful. John Guthrie has been wonderful as well. Like, they're all contributing lots of goals, even from back to front. And their defensive record is the best in this league this season. So I really wouldn't put it past them to take it across the line and use that defeat. Use the kind of the failure to get into those automatics as their motivation to push on. Yeah,
Chris, you mentioned them there. The share of the goals within the team. Notable ones, of course, being that centre-back partnership of John Guthrie and Fraser Horsfall combined to 17 across the season. Guthrie with 8, Horsfall with 9. Part of a back line alongside people like Aaron McGarren, Joseph Mills has been in there as well, Ali Koike and Liam Roberts in goal. They've had the joint most clean sheets this season, 21 from their 36 games. That's level with Tranmere Rovers. And you have to say the defence has been a really important part of Northampton's season and could well be in these playoffs as well.
Oh, absolutely. But I worry that things will go in the opposite direction to what Dave said. Having finished outside of the automatics, having spent so much time up there, and to have lost it in such a way that, I mean, it was just heartbreaking because they did everything they needed to do bar one goal, and Bristol Rovers just had a mad day. And I think that mentality can really hurt you going into playoff campaigns. You see it often. I think that's one of the things with Sunderland in other years, and clubs that spend time near the top thinking they'll go up automatically and then drop down. It tends to hit them psychologically, so I'm not feeling too confident about them.
Perhaps, but Aaron, there's a lot more to praise as well with Northampton's front line, which for I think a bit of the season you kind of questioned whether it was having a solid amount of goal scoring contribution that was going to get Northampton over the line. But you see recently the performance of people like Louis Perrier they brought in January as a striker, Josh Eppier is on loan from Leicester City as well. There is some goals in this front line alongside not just Mitchell Pinnock and Sam Hoskins as well.
Yeah, the always going to be dangerous, aren't they? Like when the scoring goes at the rate the scoring and I mean both of these ties I think very evenly matched, and I think it's going to be a really interesting match. But I have to agree with Chris as well. I think in a sense of I think for a lack of a better explanation, I think Northampton are sort of in the mould that maybe Manchester City are in currently in terms of like what Manchester City went through on Wednesday. I actually believe that could impact them so bad psychologically that they might struggle to pick themselves up off the floor now and go for it. I think on paper you would probably fancy Northampton to do it, but I think that psychological effect of what happened to them yesterday is going to play a bigger part than people think. And I think, like I was saying, the cohesive unit that Mansfield have built up, I think will just be a little bit stronger, a little bit too strong for Northampton over the two legs. So I've got Mansfield winning the tie.
In terms of the head-to-head, Mansfield Town into this on a 4-game unbeaten run. They've had 2 wins followed by 2 draws. They've had just a lone defeat in the league at Field Mill since the 2nd of October. That was a 2-3 defeat to Sutton on the 15th of April. Mansfield have the league's second best home record this season. They picked up 49 points from their 23 games at home. In contrast, the 11th best record on the road, just 28 points from 23. Northampton enter this 6 unbeaten. They picked up 4 wins and 2 draws in that time. They've got the 7th best home record in the league, 44 points from 23 games, and the joint 4th best away record with 36 from 23. And as I mentioned before, the joint best clean sheet record in the league with 21 games from 40, with 21 clean sheets from 46 games. The level with Tranmere Rovers, and they are going to be without Liam Roberts, as mentioned in this first leg. Aaron, you've already given your thoughts on this, but boys, I'd like the other ones as well. Who do you think out of Mansfield Town and Northampton Town will make it to Wembley, David?
I'm sticking with my pre-season prediction, and for me, it's Northampton Town that are winning this one.
Any reason why?
I just think that, things are very close, and things are, in terms of this whole season, things have been done by fine margins. And for me, the defensive record speaks volumes. Like, this is a team that can score from all over the pitch. They can score from crossing ability. They've got centre-backs that are on a combined 17 goals, which for me is just a ridiculous stat in itself. Like, I just feel, personally, I just feel that Northampton Town, like, defensively are very solid, and going forward probably will have too much for Mansfield Town across the 2 legs.
Chris?
I'm going for Mansfield. I think the way that Northampton have missed out on automatics, I think will just be a real sucker punch to them. And I think trying to then turn that back into a mentality of having to regain focus and fight on when really the season should be over for them. I think that'll be too difficult for them. I'm backing Mansfield.
I'm gonna go with David here, and I'm gonna go Northampton as well. And this is, I think, out of the two, this is the one I'm struggling a little bit more. I think the argument about the mentality, having just missed out on automatic motion, is a good argument, and being without Liam Roberts in the first leg isn't ideal. Although I think Johnny Maxton is a decent build backup anyway. Northampton won 2-0 at home to Mansfield back on the 16th of October. Mansfield won 1-0 away on the 2nd of April. There's very little between these two. It's likely to be a very close contest. But I do think, even with the slight knock of missing out on automatic promotion, could maybe motivate them to the point where they actually go and take that playoff spot and still get the promotion they've been craving throughout the season. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with Northampton Town to make it a Wembley over Mansfield Town on this occasion. Let's take a look at the other tie between Swindon Town and Port Vale. This is the League 2 playoff preview, looking ahead to the tie between Swindon Town and Port Vale, and I'm delighted to be joined by Swindon Town fan Ben Nicholls. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Edward. How are you today?
I'm very good. How was Saturday? Because you went to Walsall needing the win to secure a playoff spot. I mean, there was a small chance of automatic promotion, but it was always quite unlikely with every team above needing to drop points as well. But from a Walsall perspective, really dominant display at the Bescot.
Yeah, it was. It was very unlike Swindon, just not to make it too nervy, actually. It was, we sort of got the early goal, which did settle the nerves, and we took control of the game. In the second half, we just played it out. It was necessary in the world, actually, because all the other results went against us. So it was a competent, confident performance against quite an average Walsall side.
Yeah, absolutely. And climbed a place on the table as well. Started day 7th, ended day 6th.
Yeah, no, I think if the season had gone on another couple of weeks, we probably might have been pushing the automatics. But we've gone in from good form, because a little bit before the season, after we lost to Orient at home about 4 games ago, we looked dead and buried, and I thought our chances were over.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an engrossing promotion and playoff battle, and it's great to see Swindon part of it. And it's incredible in some ways, because It's incredible to think about how different Swindon Town looked to how they did just 12 months ago. You were fresh off relegation from League One. There was an increasing amount of uncertainty around the ownership of the club, of course. We'd seen John McGreal and Rennie Gilmartin being appointed as manager and assistant manager in late May and early June respectively, but both had left the club by mutual consent within 30 days. Steve Anderson and Paul Jewell stepped down to roles within positions within the club as well. And then the big news comes, Clem Morthuni being announced as the new owner and chairman of Swindon on the 20th of July. He appointed Ben Garner as manager the following day. Ben Chorley came in as director of football. Rob Angus was appointed as new chief executive. In terms of on the pitch matters, though, you had a Swindon Town side which had a handful of contracted players with a squad needing to be built given the season was starting in the matter of a couple of weeks. Looking back on that period now when Morthuni came in and the squad was being put together, what would you say your personal expectations were for the season? Were you just thinking, let's just get a squad built that can at least maintain our league status and then potentially go from there long term?
Absolutely. I think everyone had tipped us to go down. I was expecting a big struggle. I was just happy to exist, really, at the end of the day. The amount of debt that the club had got itself in, we hadn't paid the rent since March 2020. We hadn't paid tax in that time either. The staff weren't getting paid. The club was embroiled in quite a nasty public ownership battle, and there's all sorts of horrible things. And skeleton's still coming out the closet, even yet still, from that time. And just to get the club over the line, to the relief of actually still having a football club to support, and to finally get this ownership battle over, which had been over our heads since we won promotion, since March 2020. That whole season, it was a cloud over us, and obviously affected us and the players and the performances, and obviously the budget that we had. And at the time, it was just I thought we were going to have a team of youth players until January. I was fully expecting a season similar to maybe Scunthorpe, to be quite honest, had now. Beyond my wildest, if you said we finished where we would, I would have said you were mad. I was not expecting this.
Have you stopped pinching yourself yet?
It's a fairy tale. It's some story.
Absolutely.
I hope it is the actual true fairy tale that comes at the end with promotion. That would top it off. But I just hats off to the board, with Clem and the players and Garner. And the supporters as well, who backed them all the way with huge gates at the county ground, biggest I've seen since the championship days. Unbelievable. It's just been a roller coaster ride, and momentum. It's momentum since day one, and the feel good factor that's brought that on, and the club's going in the right direction.
Absolutely, it is a new era at Swindon Town, and regardless of what happens in this Perth campaign, you cannot feel anything but positivity about Swindon Town's future. I'd like your thoughts on Ben Garner, because he's someone who'd been in the coaching system for a lot of years before he took the Bristol Rovers job back in December 2019 after Graham Coughlan departed the club. Through his time at the Gas, it did come to an end in November 2020, maybe not in the most positive light, but there was a lot of notable praise for his dedication to developing young players and his attention to detail as a coach. Have you seen that in the young players and indeed the more experienced players that he's had at his disposal at Swindon?
Absolutely. Ben Garner is someone who has got a reputation for coaching young players, and you think of the players that have we produced for the season who have enhanced their careers or the prospects. Players like Tyree Simpson, who no one ever heard of before, now is one of the hottest young prospects in the Football League. Kane Kessler-Hayden, Louis Barry's making a current name for himself now. There's a number of players that have really stepped up under the stewardship of Ben Garner, and it's his influence on Johnny Williams, why he took a step down from the Championship to League Two, and why he takes such a big pay cut, because we've got a wage cap of £1,300 still, and that's our maximum wage cap. And we've taught players of Johnny Williams' ilk, who was paying a lot more than that at the Championship level at Cardiff, to step to League Two. And that's because of the experience he had with Ben Garner at Crystal Palace. And he wanted to come down and enjoy football again because he'd fallen a little bit out of love with it. So he's just a brilliant manager, a really, really, really good coach. And I think he's developed this season as well. I think maybe Bristol Rovers might have just been too early for him, or the circumstances within the club that didn't sit right or didn't feel right. Obviously, they got relegated after he left, a long time after he left. So I don't think he might have been the problem that was at Rovers of last year. I don't know. But I think we've got a good one here. And he signed up long-term contract as well. So he's tied in for the long run. And he's here as a project. We've sort of got a brains trust of a coaching team with him. So it's good. It's a good thing that he's here, and he's grown as well as the squad this season, and you can tell that in the way that we've played football and the way we've adjusted and the way that we're a much better thought out team than we were when we first started the season. Kudos to Ben. We're just really appreciative that the effort that he's done this season.
Yeah, absolutely. There is so much to love in the Swindon Town squad, including the football and indeed the players. And one of the standout units to me is the midfield of the Robins have. It's taken a variety of different shapes over the weeks during the season, but quite recently we've seen a consistent starting trio of Jack Payne, Jonny Williams, as you mentioned, and Louis Reed in a deeper position. What is it about the skill sets of those three players that makes them work so well collectively in that midfield?
Well, I think the jewel in the crown is Louis Reed. I think he goes unsung a lot and slips under the radar because he's not, the attacking frills spills player. But what he does do, he dictates the pace of the play. He's really one of the best passers I've seen of the ball in a long time in the Swindon shirt, probably since someone like Yasser Kassim back in them days. He's a really good mover of the ball. He loves to tackle as well. He gets stuck in. He leads by example. He's only little. I think we've probably got the smallest midfield in the league, which is probably a weakness in itself. We're great technically, but we're not so physically big. He complements the team brilliantly. I think he works well in the type of Swindon side than he would do in most sides. I think we need to play the type of football to get the best out of him. But when he's not playing, we miss him really badly. I think there's a stat that I read the other day. When he's not, the only game we've won that he's not played in was our opening game at Scunthorpe. All the other victories he's been involved in, and that says a lot about the man. He's the heartbeat of the side. So a lot of people say if you could lose one, keep one player for next season. A lot of people think all Swindon fans would say Harry McCurdy. It's Louis Reed. He's everything.
Yeah. Now, how about Jack Payne and Jonny Williams as well? Because I think Williams has played in midfield and a bit out left as well. I think Jack Payne's been part of the front line a couple of times as well. It's obviously Louis Reed that allows them to be a lot more expressive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he lets them off their leash really, and they can be as creative as they like midfield. Both they've had glittering careers at a lot higher level than League Two. Jonny Williams is, as I say, it was a joke. I thought it was a joke when the news came down that he had signed for us, because he's played in the Euro Championships. Well, he's been involved in Euro Championships. He's been involved in World Cups. He'll most likely go to Wales if they qualify to the World Cup as well. He's played his career mostly in League One level or Championship, and a little bit in the Premiership as well. So, and he's only 29, so he speaks for himself, the quality that he brings to the table. He's so silky smooth on the ball. He's a great carrier of the ball. He gets fouled a lot and gets picked out.
Is he someone who has to be a bit managed as well? Because I think his game time is quite limited.
Yeah, he's had a bit of a nightmare with injuries, and he says towards recently he's not really been enjoying his football because of that. So he sort of would play 60 minutes one game. He wouldn't play 2 full 90 minutes a week. He'd play 60 minutes one week and maybe 30 minutes on the Saturday. So he does get managed a little bit. Same with Ben Gladwin, actually, another player technically brilliant, but has suffered horrendous injuries throughout his career. And they sort of like been intertwining a little bit. But of late, I think Williams has been playing a little bit more and more. He's played a lot of games this season. It must be like sort of 35, 36 games. So he's been largely injury free, and you can tell that. So again, it's another credit to the club that someone who has suffered so badly has now probably played more games in one this season than he has any other time of his career. As in Jack Payne, again, is another player. We missed him from January to March through injury. And that's no coincidence. We went for our worst run in that time as well. I think we won like 3-11 or something like that at that time, and that he was missing. And he's a jack in the box. He scores goals from all over the pitch. He can play anywhere as well. He can help out at the back. He can link up front. He can play the number 10. He can play out wide. And he's so confident on the ball. He's skillful. He's a good passer. He's got the lot, basically. He's the complete midfielder. For this level, it's again, he's class.
Absolutely. Brilliant midfield three. Fantastic across the whole season. We're talking Swindon. We've got to talk Harry McCurdy. We just can't not. He's a player whose talent level has never ever been in doubt wherever he's been. But I think at previous clubs like Carlisle United and Port Vale, there were noted comments about his mindset and his attitude and how much that impacted his game on the pitch and how much he could truly flourish at the club. But in his first season at Swindon, he's been absolutely phenomenal. 27 goal involvements across the league campaign, a space in the team of the season as well. What do you think has been the secret to getting him so good in 2021-22? Is it the system he plays under Ben Garner, or is it maybe the environment and the feel around Swindon Town?
I think it's a combination of all of it. I think when he came to Swindon, he was at a crossroads with his career. It was petering out because of his reputation as a character, not more than his talent, but his character. I know that he's not really played any more than 1 year at any other club and not really lasted a full season before being dished out to the bomb squad. When he arrived, there was, he himself said he's only here really because the club were in a terrible state. So the club took a punt on him. And when he came out on a trial, I think the secret from McCurdy, he's a character that needs attention. He needs to be loved and he craves it. And when he's loved and he's given that, and he's going to be McCurdy, he's going to be a bit, controversial. He's that sort of, he's that sort of character, yeah. And he's sort of a maverick player. And I think Garner's treated him brilliantly, that he gives him that little bit of rope that he probably wouldn't do with other players. So he gives him that little bit, but McCurdy in return gives that bit back. And watching him, his effort, he works so hard for the team, and he runs his absolute backside off week in, week out, and he does a lot more than just score goals. And he's a real vocal point and a fan's favourite. And yeah, the fans absolutely love him. And the fact that he feeds off atmosphere, he feeds off supporters. He doesn't mind if it's good or negative. He plays up to the away fans because he wants them to boo him. He wants that attention to him because that enhances his game. So he feeds off that, and he's a talent beyond this level, and and we're lucky to have him. But I do also feel that he needs a modern type manager. I think if he was under a strict disciplinarian, maybe someone like Sheridan last season, he would have been in a bomb squad within a couple of weeks because he needs a modern type manager just to give him that rope, and a youngish squad as well that can take his banter, which Swindon have, and he needs that right sort of atmosphere. He may only work at Swindon. He may only work with this particular squad, but it just clicks for him. But his light is shining brightly at the minute, and long may it be so.
Yeah, long may it be so, absolutely. One of the things that I noted with Swindon was some of the setbacks they had, losing players in the January window. You had Kane Kessler-Hayden on loan to Aston Villa, who was so impressive in a wing-back role out on the right. Ramoni Critchlow-Lowe was part of the back line. He was loaned to Huddersfield. Tyree Simpson had really caught the eye as well as part of a strike partnership with McCurdy up top through Ipswich. And the players all left during the January window. And do you feel Swindon as a whole have dealt really well with their departures in the second half of the season? Or do you look back and think, if we'd just been able to keep the hand of those players throughout the whole campaign, we could be talking about a promotion side here rather than a playoff team?
Yeah, well, at that time as well, we lost, as you say, we lost Jack Payne for 3 months.
Yes.
So, these were 4 first-team regulars we lost in January, and that hit us hard. That's what's cost automatic promotion, because we have replaced them. We've replaced really well. Players like Manny Egbo and Josh Davison have come in and all done sterling jobs. But at the time we were going to be pushing towards the top of the league. We had a formation that suited, which was 3-5-2 at the time. Kane Kessler-Hayden was just magic. You can tell from just day one. I think the Man City game, week before Man City game, Steven Gerrard said he's doing wonders at Swindon. We're going to leave him there for the season. Then we played Man City and he put De Bruyne on his backside. He sent Jesus to the shops twice and he gave Cancelo as good as he got. You know, he was the only player that didn't look out of place. The rest of us looked like a lower league team trying really hard. He fitted. He looked right. And Gerrard, the very next day, just recalled him straight away and put him on the bench against Man United for Villa. So it's, he was class. He's class 8. He's got a big future in front of him. But I think that also led the way in us to getting Louis Barry. And I think this bodes well for future loans in the future as well, that we can be trusted with these type of players. Critchlow was another one, a player who was on the cusp, but had a wonderful first half of the season. So much so that Huddersfield got him and then loaned him out to a League One, top of the League One team. To develop him even more. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like it worked out for him, but, he again was a huge loss in the back line. And the big one, Tyrese Simpson at front, he was unbelievably good. And you watched him grow from game by game from this absolute mountain of a man. You couldn't believe he's 19 years old, but he had talent, but he was a little bit headless chicken-like, but he just grew onto this really top striker towards the end of it, and he didn't want to leave as well. And it was so disappointing that Ipswich recalled him the way they did and the circumstances they had, and it sounds as like it's backfired on them a little bit. But yeah, Tyrese is going to be some striker towards the end of the season. And if he'd stayed, I'm pretty sure we would have been pushing the top 3. But credit to Ben Garner, because after he went, we brought the new loans in. 3-5-2 wasn't working anymore, so we changed it to a 4-3-3. McCurdy and Barry in either flank of Davison, and we're as good as we were before.
Exactly.
So that's credit. Yeah, so that's the credit to the management team. But yeah, the loans were a victim of their own success, but it was they've done really well. And it bodes well for the club in the future, getting future loans, because these top clubs now know that loaning players to us, they're in safe hands. I mean, they can be playing good football and they will be developed. So I'm excited to see who we get next season.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the tie, Swindon Town against Port Vale. I spoke with you beforehand. Interestingly, it's the 2 best away records in the league, actually. Swindon Town top the away form table. Port Vale, after the win at Exeter, are now second in the table as well. What were your experiences at Port Vale during the regular season? It was a win for both teams in their away game. Port Vale winning 2-1 at Swindon, Swindon winning 3-1 at Vale Park. What are you expecting from this playoff tie? Are you expecting a very tight contest between 2 strong sides, or do you have a lot of confidence that Swindon Town over both legs can get past Port Vale and get to Wembley?
I'm pretty confident in the fact that at home now we seem to have put our problems to bed. I think we had one of the worst home records in the league going into March. It really was down there, and our away form was keeping it up. But I think we've kind of we had a little blip towards the end, but we kind of fixed that now, and the atmosphere has grown and expectations, and you could tell mentally they weren't the same team, that there was a mental problem there, because the football, they weren't moving the ball as quickly or as confidently as they were do when they were away from home. I know teams set up in a certain way, which they can't do when they're at home when we played them, where they sort of sit in a bank of 4 with 2 defensive midfielders, or a 5 and 2 defensive midfielders. It's just like, you break us down and we'll try and nick a corner in a set play. And if there is a weakness to Swindon, it is through set plays, because we're a small team. We've not got that many big players, and that could be a problem going on against Northampton and Mansfield, but obviously that's going on ahead. I think we'll be. This county ground, this game at Swindon might be pretty tight, but I hopefully I'll be happy even to take a draw with that one and take them to Vale Park, because Vale Park, it's got a nice big wide pitch. We like that. We've got a second record at Vale Park, and with our technical players up at that pitch, we given Barry and McCurdy some space, and I think I'm confident that even a draw at the county ground, I'll be confident of going to Vale and getting victory up there. So the tie is the right way round for me, and I think, and I don't want to be arrogant in saying this, that our 11 are better than their best 11. It's all on the day, and you don't know what's going to happen, and the little football changes everything. You know, they could be sending off in the first 10 minutes, or we can go 2 down in the first 10 minutes. You don't know. It's the ground football. But I think on paper, our team's better than their team. So I'm confident. Yeah.
Good to hear your confidence. Good to hear. One final thing I want to get from you, Ben, before you go, is a prediction. We're not going to do Swindon Town before Bell because you've given your thoughts on that already. What I'd like to hear from you is your thoughts on the other playoff tie, Mansfield Town against Northampton Town. What are you thinking with that? Is there one of the two sides that you look at and think, I would much rather Swindon Town face them if they were to get to Wembley? Or is your mindset at the moment, bring it on whoever it is out of the two?
Bring it on. My mindset is just trying to get to Wembley. I know Port Vale bring their own threat and they've got good players, but I'm really not that bothered who we play. You know, you'd think Northampton, because they've just gone through the disappointment of just missing out promotion horribly, and just I do actually feel for them because they think they've got it all tied up with a 3-1 win. How can you win 3-1 and drop a place? It's really hard, really. But yeah, so that's obviously going to be a psychological damage to them. But by the time, if they do get to Wembley, they'll be over that because they'll be for getting to Wembley by getting through Mansfield. So I'm really not bothered. Mansfield were in terrific form up until the running, and they've sort of been a bit hit and miss. I watched the game against Salford on telly, and I wasn't actually too impressed with either team, actually. But they do bring a threat, aerial threat, set plays. Both of them do. You know, they're a bit different to Vale. Yeah, I'd like to take them on the Wembley pitch. As a winner between the two of them, I'm not particularly bothered, and I think it's too close to call. Really, it's flip a coin with who wins that tie.
Okay, excellent, Ben. Thank you very much, and best of luck to the playoffs.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Aaron, we need to go back to the very start of the season to fully understand how impressive what Swindon have done here. Heading into the start of the campaign, there was doubts about whether even the club would complete the season. They had a handful of contracted players. They just had the new owners come in Clem Multhuni, forced to put a squad together, which at the time you felt, would it be able to compete for survival? You could tell within a couple of weeks they're going to do a lot better than survive this season. And what a campaign they've had.
Yeah, some of the recruitment that they did was marvellous. Really, I mean, probably the biggest one, and we've talked about him numerous times on the podcast, for the sheer talent he has, is Harry McCurdy. I think any team with probably Harry McCurdy, Johnny Williams are going to cause you problems, and I think they've done exceptionally well. And it just shows if you've got the belief, you can start poorly, because again, it's all about mindset. If you have that mindset that you can turn yourselves around and pick yourselves up off the floor, then anything can be done. And I think Swindon are a perfect example of that. And yeah, they fully deserve to be where they are.
Yeah, we mentioned McCurdy, Chris, who's of course had a fantastic season, 27 goal involvements. But I think I mentioned as well, has got to go to the midfield unit in this team. Johnny Williams, who's still a Wales international even now, Louis Reed, Jack Payne in there contributing goals as well. Could Swindon's midfield arguably be the best in the whole league?
I think it's got to be up there. And I love Jack Payne. I think he's a fantastic player. I think it will be their real strength going into this match, because there is so much talent there, and they're such an exciting team to watch, and it's nice to see, as we've commented on, they had such a torrid time, both with the quality of the football and with the politics and the financial side of the game under their former owner and under John Sheridan. It's nice for them to have this turnaround to such a high quality, entertaining style of football, and that midfield is to thank for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got to mention, David, that throughout the season as well, they've had some setbacks. For instance, the first start of the season, you had a frontline pairing of Harry McCurdy and young Tyree Simpson, who was really impressing on loan to Ipswich Town as well. You had Kane Kessler-Hayden really catching the eye on a wing-back role on loan to Aston Villa. Ramoni Critchlow-Noble in the back line as well. And we've seen those players move on in January. They had Brandon Cooper in on loan from Swansea, whose loan spell had to come to an end through injury. Joe Tomlinson on loan to Peterborough, whose loan spell had to come to an end through injury as well. They've dealt with the setbacks really well to secure this player spot.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, that for me is the mark of a very positive team as well. One that can kind of, you know, January window is never easy. It doesn't matter what team you are, it's not an easy window to face, and for them to have come through that for them to have come through the hardship that they had before this season started, to have, 4 professional players signed to a contract, and to be at this point in the season where they are currently on the verge or potential of a promoted or being a promoted side again through the playoff places is just nothing short of brilliant.
Nothing short of brilliant at all, absolutely. This is the League 2 playoff preview, looking ahead to the tie between Swindon Town and Port Vale, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jonny Hancock from the El Vale podcast. Jonny, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. How was Saturday? You went down to Exeter, an Exeter side chasing a title, needing a win potentially yourselves to secure a playoff spot with a lot of teams around you getting results as well, and you got a brilliant win down the South Coast.
We did. It was horrible is probably the best way to describe it. The 90 odd minutes of it was hell, but then as soon as the final whistle went, it was glorious. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them situations where we finished 6 points off the top, and the reflection of the season is you look at games and pick out moments in games that have happened and thought, if that didn't happen, and such like, and it could have been so different. But yeah, it feels great. At the start of the season, if you were offering me playoffs, I would have bit your hand off.
Absolutely. It's been an enthralling promotion and playoff battle throughout the whole season, League 2, really, from a neutral perspective. I've always wondered, being involved in it yourselves so much as Port Vale have been, has it been quite fun or quite tense? Is there quite enjoyment about knowing there's so much competition and that you're there with them?
Yeah, it's fun for the neutral, I think. I think when you're involved in it, and the spell that we went through where we ended up being 10th and then fighting his way back in and being 3rd and then dropping then into being in the playoffs has been a bit up and down. But overall, it's great. It's great to be involved, and it just shows the strength of the league, and it's going to get stronger next season as well by Wrexham and probably Stockport joining them. So
yeah, some strong sides certainly set to come up to the National League if things go as they are. In terms of Port Vale's season, I want to start with a reflection. This is Port Vale's 5th straight season in League 2, and this 5th place finish is the highest they've had in that time, the previous being 8th place via points per game back in 2019-20. A lot has happened to Port Vale across the last decade, and one of the most significant moments to me was back in May 2019 when Carroll and Kevin Shanahan bought out Norman Smurthwaite and became the co-chairs of Port Vale Football Club. And Carroll has since become the sole chair of the club since Kevin stepped down in January 2020. We've had 3 full seasons now of Vale under the Shanahans. How do you reflect on that period at the club, both from on the pitch and off the pitch?
Yeah, I think we'll start with off the pitch. Off the pitch, so much has changed. So we've been through the lockdown situation, obviously, and the club stepped up with the Hub Foundation, doing the meals and just doing so much great work for the community. From a footballing side, they've given it a lick of paint, which sounds a bit daft, but you went previously and you've been since on Ed, and it looks just a lot more of an inviting place. They filled in the seats on Lawn Street, which we haven't had in for 20 odd years. Granted, they can't be used for footballing reasons at the moment, but that's coming. The concourse behind is the players' gym at the moment. So they haven't put anything in there because we need to relocate that in the summer, and whatnot. So there's loads of stuff that's happened, and it's all really positive. They're such lovely people. They've got the club at heart. Their son Patrick's getting more involved with bits and pieces now, learning the ropes and such like. So he's always about and doing different bits, and they're just, like I say, lovely people, and there's nothing at the moment to dislike about them.
And how would you say things are on the pitch under their tenure as well?
On the pitch, it's been up and down. Obviously, like I say, we finished 8th on points per game in their first season, which was painful. The second season just didn't.
I would say, sorry, just to add, I remember that being a very selfless decision though, because they were ones of those that proved going to points per game, even with Port Vale in a situation where they were right outside those playoff spots, and I found that a very commendable thing to do at that time.
Yeah, it was 100%. Like that's the sort of thing, that sort of person she is as well. It wasn't about Port Vale, it was about what's best for the league and what keeps the integrity. And I know obviously Tranmere didn't agree with it because they got relegated, but at the end of the day, it was selfless by her. And yeah, kind of, you look back at it now and gone, maybe if she'd been a bit more selfish, things might have been different. But I think overall it puts us in a good place. It sets the ethos for the club, and you can look back and say, look, we do what's best for the people rather than for us, and it's a good selling point to players. I say the second season under them wasn't as good. They reacted quite slowly to getting rid of John Askey, in my opinion. And then it seemed like it took an age to get Clark in. And then when Clark finally did come in, things turned around slightly, but he then went and released 15 players in the summer and started the rebuild. And now, yeah, this season's been a roller coaster, but it's a roller coaster for the right reasons, because we're up the top end.
Yeah, it's not necessarily done yet either, of course. Let's talk about Darrell Clarke and his management team. It's his first full season as Port Vale manager. He was originally appointed back in February 2021. You'd have to say it's been a successful season for him so far. He personally has picked up accolades. He's had the Manager of the Month award in both September 2021 and October 2021 as well. We heard the news back on the 15th of February that he would take a period of leave following a close family bereavement, and that assistant Andy Crosby was to stand in as acting manager during his absence. Darrell Clarke has recently begun a phased return to the management role, of course, and will make a full return to the position this summer. The level of support that's been shown to Darrell Clarke, not just from Port Vale but from other football clubs, especially Bristol Rovers, where he's so fondly remembered, is nothing short of wonderful to see. What I wanted to ask you, Johnny, is how proud are you of the job that Andy Crosby and the whole Port Vale team have done during Darrell Clarke's absence?
It's been nothing short of brilliant. Like the way that they stepped up, the way that we battled through it. It's what I think a lot of people don't understand is that the losing your manager in the way that we did, and having to change things around, change the setup sort of thing. We brought in Adam Murray for a short period, and then he got the job at Besiktas. I think it was as assistant manager, because the old West Brom and Barnsley manager went there, and he'd been with him before, sort of thing. So we brought him in to help and stuff like that. So it's been really interesting to watch them grow. Crosby's never been a manager himself, so he's never been in that front line sort of thing, but he has worked with some really good managers as well. So things have been, it's been a strange season, but the whole management team have been fantastic.
Yeah, of course. 12 permanent signings made during the summer at Port Vale. Some of the standouts for me in that list were Ben Garrity and Tom Pett, who joined into the midfield unit, and then the frontline pair of James Wilson and Jamie Proctor as well. How would you assess the impact those four in particular have had on Port Vale's team?
Oh, Ben Garrity, if you listen to Oldham fans who are signing a right dud, but Blackpool fans absolutely adored him, with not really ever seen him other than in the under-23. So Garrity was quite a weird signing. And then when he came in, you looked at him and you went, you could see why Oldham fans weren't in love with him, because yes, he was a workhorse, but the football inside of it wasn't perfect. And then he just developed this knack to get in the box and put his body on it to start scoring goals. And then when you've got a midfielder that's scoring 10, 11 goals a season, you can't not like him, can you?
Absolutely.
So yeah, Garrity's fantastic, and he's so down to earth. To be fair, one of the best interviews, if you watch after the Walsall defeat at home, Ben Garrity comes out to the media and he's like a school child that's just been told off. He's wearing his shirt with his jumper on that's a bit ruffled, and he looks properly upset by it, and it just shows that it matters to the team. So he's been class. You mentioned Pett. We've asked him to do a different role than he's ever done before. We've turned him into a holding midfielder, and he's got I think he's up there with the third or fourth most tackles in the league, and one of the top fouls as well. He loves turning his body in front of a defender and then just falling over onto the ball. It doesn't look that great as an opposition. You'd get really annoyed by it, but he knows how to break up play and sort of do that role. And Pett's been fantastic, and we missed him when he got injured the other week. Brad Walker stepped in, and then sadly Walker got injured as well. But yeah, them pair in midfield have been great, and they've really stepped up in Conlon's absence, because yeah, that's a massive miss. And then you mentioned the front two, and there's there's not really much else you can say about the front pair. Like, if they were both fit for the whole season, then probably both are hitting 20 goals. Like, Wilson unfortunately broke his foot after scoring a hat-trick against Accrington, and it was literally broke his foot by kicking the floor, I think, as he struck the ball. So that's quite frustrating for him. And then Proctor was probably rushed back a bit too soon against Walsall, and then suffered a setback, so we missed him. But both have been brilliant. Wilson, when you watch him, he's so good with the ball. And if you've seen his goal against Exeter, most League Two strikers get that there and probably hit it as hard as physically possible and hope for the best. But he just controls it and just feathers it in. It's such a good finish, and that's what James Wilson can do. And the love he's got for the club because of the area he's from, because he's a local lad, it's fantastic.
Yeah, you mentioned the front two there and the injuries those two had. And I think for me that was a very notable setback for Port Vale across the whole season. Really, that injury crisis they had with frontline options about midway through the campaign as well. We saw occasions during then when Port Vale were having to play with David Amu or Dennis Politic as a partnership on the pitch at times. Not natural strikers, you'd have to say, but having the extra deckers of available options. Given how tight this promotion and playoff race has been this season in League Two, is that a period you look back on and kind of think, if we just had more available options, we could well be talking about an automatic promotion team here rather than a playoff side?
In that period, I'd probably say no, because it sounds strange, but we actually we drew it home to Bradford on TV, and I don't think that was anything to do with not having a striker. Do you know what I mean? That was poor refereeing on the day. Their lads, they should have had a red card after about 20 minutes for 2 yellows, and it just didn't happen. We then went and lost 3-2 to Oldham because we couldn't defend balls into the box. So again, wasn't really anything to do with the strikers. We'd scored 2 goals away from home, and that should be enough for you. We beat Bristol Rovers during the time. We lost to Newport because we were down to 10 men, and such like. So I don't really feel that. I'm not saying we didn't miss them, because we did, but I don't really feel that the strikers was the problem during the period, because when we had the problem came when we had the break for COVID. We didn't play from early December till Brentford in the FA Cup. I think we had like 4 or 5 weeks off at the time, and that really halted things and just disjointed us a little bit.
Yeah, okay, interesting to hear. We've given some love, of course, to the midfield and the front line at Port Vale. Who's been the standouts in what's been, I think, a very impressive Port Vale defence this season?
Connor Hall, 100% Connor Hall. We signed him in January, and I have no doubt that if we signed him in the summer, he'd be on for Player of the Season. He's so different than anything that we had beforehand. Him and Dan Jones, both left-footed, both played left of the three. Dan Jones was fantastic the first half of the season. He got his injury and stuff. We signed Connor Hall, and he's just come in and he does everything that Dan Jones does, barring the throw-in, but a little bit better. He's a bit taller, he's a bit stronger, he feels a bit quicker. He does that overlap that Sheffield United did really well when they went up to the Premier League, for example, from the centre halves. He overlaps the wing back, whoever it is, and he's just such a good centre half. And I think it's more surprising than anything, because when we signed him, I couldn't really tell you much about him. So it wasn't someone you looked at and gone, oh yeah, actually I remember him. He was Harrogate's best centre half when we played him. It wasn't really anything that you could remember. So it's a surprise as well as a treat for us.
Yeah, absolutely. How about the goalkeepers as well? Because you've gone through 3 as far as I could tell. It began the season with Lucas Coverland, who'd come in from Torquay United. Had Aidan Stone from Mansfield Town. You had Thomas Holly on a loan from Ipswich Town as well. Aidan Stone's been the number one for a long period now. Would you say out of the 3, he's been the most consistent goalkeeper over the season?
He's been the one that hasn't done.
Ah, right.
Yeah. He's been the one that hasn't made as many mistakes as the others, shall we say. Lucas, obviously, he got sent off against Chesterfield in a pre-season friendly. And then Clarkey said after that game, he said it was never a red card. The ref just gave him one. Obviously, it doesn't matter, it's a friendly. And then the very next game was the first game of the season. He went and got himself sent off again, which is never great as it's your first appearance. he worked on that. He rushed out the area. Then he took a touch. It was a terrible touch. Northampton lad nicked it and he just dragged him down. It was always a red card. And then he went and got sent off against Swindon for karate kicking Harry McCurdy in the chest. Now, we'd all love to do it, but you can't as a footballer, really. It's not the done thing, is it? He kind of lost management confidence then. They seem to have bombed him out. He was back on the bench against Exeter, but they seem to think that was it for him. Like, obviously don't know if something went on after that or whatnot, but they seem to draw the line there. So Stoney then came in for a couple of games, and then Thomas Holley turned up, and you look at him, we've signed this 6'7" keeper, and you think that's an imposing figure. Yeah, it's not. It just didn't work for him. Gillingham fans loved him in League One, so there's obviously a good goalkeeper in there. But it just didn't work for us. He was a bit too slow. He wasn't as commanding, and the goal that we conceded away at Colchester sums it up for me. A corner into the 6-yard box, and he's planted on his line. And if you actually watch the goal, the header goes straight down the middle, and he ducks.
Yep, I remember it.
Yeah, 6'7". If he stands up, it hits him in the face. That's the worst thing about it. But he actually ducks out the way, and it's just frustrating. That was. Stoney's come in, and Stone's been good. I wouldn't say any more than that. Although the save he made on Saturday against Exeter was fantastic. But yeah, it's a position where I wouldn't say that you could argue that he cost us against Northampton and Swindon. It's really, but I wouldn't say that they've really cost us too many points, because the goals that Hull conceded weren't great, for example, but they came from mistakes. The Tranmere goal that we conceded came from us losing it in midfield, and similar to the Rochdale game in the same week. So whilst I think the keeper should have done better, it's not like he's thrown it in his net. So I don't think the keeper's been that much of an issue, but you need a number one, don't you? That's
yeah, interesting to hear, certainly. Okay, to the game itself, Swindon Town. What have been your experiences of them during the season? It was an away win for both sides when the two met during the regular season. This tie is a contest between the teams with the two best away records in the league. Swindon lead the league with the best away record. Port Vale is second after that win at Exeter. What are you anticipating from this playoff tie? Are you expecting a tight contest that could go either way, or do you back Port Vale to quite comfortably see them off over both legs?
I think it'll be very tight. I think you look at Swindon, and they're a very good side. They were patched together at the start of the season. Everyone's favourites to go down, and they made some real good signings. Johnny Williams, for example, he shouldn't be playing League Two football, but he is. So you've got to deal with it, sort of thing. They've got a very good keeper. They've got players that can play football. They're quick. They've got Harry McCurdy, which pains me to say it, but he's having a season of his life, and attitude-wise, he's still giving it big beans everywhere. But when he's having a good season, you can't begrudge him doing it as well. It's annoying as an opposition fan, but he's going to have a point to prove, because obviously we got rid of him. Clarkey didn't like him for whatever reason, whether it's footballing or personality, no one knows, because we'll never find that out. But yeah, he's obviously a good player, isn't he? And I think when we went there earlier in the season, first thing that Devante Rodney at the time did was forearm smash their centre half in the face. It didn't get caught, but he got retrospectively banned after. So that could have been a complete different game. And then in the return leg, Lucas, like I say, kicked McCurdy in the chest and got sent off. So it's been two strange games against them. But you could see the class that Johnny Williams had in both the games, really. But the second one at Vale Park, especially, because he used the size of our pitch against us because of the ability he's got. So it's going to be tight. It's going to be cagey, I think, for the first 15 minutes of both games. But happy that we're at home the second leg, really.
Would you be accepting a draw at the county ground the first leg, or would you want to take a lead back to Vale Park?
I'd take it. I wouldn't, obviously, not going to say I'd be happy, but if we lost 1-0 at the county ground, I wouldn't be devastated.
Okay.
I think, like, it's the old cliche, isn't it, that you can't win a tie in the first leg, but you can definitely lose it. So I think you've got to make sure that you're in the game. So if we lost 1-0, I'm confident enough that we can score 2 at Vale Park. But obviously, if you said to me now, we'll give you a draw and it goes down to a 1-game shootout, yeah, 100% take it. I think winning would be fantastic, but people have got to then remember that Swindon are a good side. And like you said, best away record in the league, so it wouldn't actually be a surprise if there was 2 away wins in them games. But yeah, it's cagey. We're favourites with the bookies, I've noticed, but I think that's just because of not being able to split the other 2 in the other semi-final.
Yeah, interesting to hear. One final thing I want to ask you, Jonny, before you go, is for a prediction. I'm not going to get you to predict Swindon against Port Vale because we know where your allegiances lie. We know who you're going to back in that situation. What I want to ask you about is the other semi-final, Mansfield Town against Northampton Town. What are you thinking with that? Is there one of those 2 teams that you look at and think, if Port Vale were to get to Wembley, I would much rather they played them there? Or is your mindset at the moment bringing on whichever of the 2 it is?
We've taken 4 points off Mansfield this season,
Mm-hmm.
so I think part of me leans towards that, and I'd love to hear Nigel Clough have a breakdown after, because he's already been moaning that we should have had red cards this season, and we've been lucky and stuff like that. In an interview recently, he actually named us, so we've obviously got him a little rattled. Northampton, we've drawn and lost against. They're a big side though, so the fact that they just be throwing the balls into the box frustrates a little bit, and I don't know if I'd like to have that nervousness in the game. So yeah, I think both have the reasons, but I think if I had to pick it based on this season, it'd be Mansfield.
Excellent, Jonny. Thank you very much, and best of luck for the playoffs.
Thank you.
Port Vale, Aaron. Quite a good amount of expectation at the start of the season, hoping they could bounce back from a little difficult end to the 2021 campaign coming into this new season. They've, like a number of sides this year, been engrossed in this incredible promotion playoff battle. Found themselves sometimes out of the playoffs, found themselves sometimes in the automatic spots. It was in prime position for automatics heading into the Easter weekend, but 3 consecutive defeats saw them slip out of those automatic places, and a win at Exeter on the final day got them a playoff spot. Do you think they'll take confidence from that win over Exeter, or could the thought of missing out on automatics when in such a prime position maybe impact their confidence ahead of this campaign?
So Port Vale's a strange one for me because I think Port Vale, over the 2 games that I've seen them play Oldham, were probably one of the better footballing sides of the division, and they've got the quality there. They've got, James Wilson will score goals at any level, and I think he's proven to do that at Salford now and at Port Vale. Obviously, Jamie Proctor is still scoring goals, which is remarkable. Then you've got even the likes of like Ben Garrity in the midfield, who, if I'm being honest,
Don't do it.
at that he certainly wasn't a fan favourite, but he seems to have gone to Port Vale, and they seem to have sort of released the shackles on him, and he looks like a completely different player. So I think this tie is 2 of the better sides that I've seen Oldham play this year in this division. And I think, like you say, that confidence at Exeter, the win, will set them well, and I expect them to do well in this tie, and it'll be a very even tie.
We're going to give a mention of Darrell Clark, Chris, who has had a period out of the game through personal reasons, and Andy Crosby's done wonderful work in his absence to get Port Vale into promotion contention.
Yeah, he really sort of held the fort really well, and it's nice to see Darrell Clark back in the dugout, and he was rewarded for it yesterday with a 1-0 win over Exeter, and I think that can only give them confidence going into this campaign now. I think they've got the manager back. They've had a win against a very good Exeter side. They're going into this with a lot of confidence, I think.
Yeah, David, perhaps a lot of key parts of this Port Vale team, but one of the standouts to me is that front partnership of James Wilson and Jamie Proctor, which they haven't been able to have about the whole season. There was a period in the middle of the campaign where Port Vale were in a bit of a striker crisis, really having to use people like David Amoon, Dennis Politic when he was on loan as well. And they've recently seen those strikers return, and I've got to say, when Wilson and Proctor are fully on it, I'm not sure there's a better strike partnership in the league, really. They've been fantastic over the season.
I'd have to agree. I mean, 25 goals between the two of them, and just the way they play when they play together, it's almost instinctual, isn't it? You know, the only way I can relate it to is Kane and Son in the Prem. Like, it's wonderful. It is wonderful to watch them play together. And for me, that's going to be a real key factor in this game, is that partnership is going to be so important moving into this game in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the head-to-head, Swindon Town enter this game 4 unbeaten. They've won all 4 of those games. They've had 5 wins in their last 6. The only defeat in that time was at home to Leyton Orient. Swindon have finished the season as the league's top scorers with 77 league goals as well. No one in the league's finished higher. Swindon have had the joint 11th best home record in the league this season, 34 points from 23 games at home, but they are the best team on the road in the whole division, picked up 43 points in away games. Port Vale have lost 3 of the last 4 games, and prior to that had a run of 9 unbeaten, with 8 of those being wins, but do come into this playoffs on the back of a win up at title chasing Exeter, or down at title chasing Exeter, I should say, sorry, very good for them. They've had the joint 8th best home record in the league this season, 39 points from 23 games, but they're second in the away form table, 39 to 23, so we've got the 2 best away teams in League 2 here, going up against each other, and both will be away in one of their legs, which could make it quite interesting, certainly. And it's reflected in the results during the season as well. Swindon lost at home to Port Vale 2-1 back on the 11th of September, and Swindon won 3-1 at Vale Park back on the 15th of January as well. So this almost feels a bit like a game where the away side might be favoured in the home leg rather than the team actually playing at home on that occasion, but we'll have to see. Aaron, I would like your thoughts, please, on who out of Swindon Town and Port Vale you think is going to make it to Wembley.
So for me, I think this is actually going to be the better footballing tie to watch. I fancy Port Vale to do it just. So Port Vale are my finalists.
Okay, David, your thoughts, please.
I can't believe this, Aaron. We're in agreement. For me,
oh my God.
I know, crazy, isn't it? For me, it's Port Vale as well. Yeah, I just think JB Proctor and I think Proctor and Wilson just have a bit too much. And I think across the season, for me, Port Vale have looked very, very good. And as good as Swindon have been this year, for me, I don't know. I just have a gut feeling. This for me is the hardest tie to pick out of the two, actually, because I think this one could. It's just such a thin line, but by the skin of their teeth, for me, it's Port Vale.
Chris?
I agree with the analysis so far. I think it is going to be a very good game of football, but both of the matches. I'm edging towards Swindon for this one. They go into it with a good record, a good bit of form, and I do love that midfield. And I think it will be close, but I see Swindon edging it.
Yeah, I'm with Chris here. I'm edging towards Swindon as well, actually. And it's a really tough one to call, much like Mansfield Northampton was as well. I think I'm really interested to see how this game goes, because you've got a team that's very fluid under Ben Garner in Swindon Town, and Port Vale, who under Darrell Clark and Andy Crosby have been a very good cohesive unit, very impressive defensively. They've not had a lot of heavy defeats at all over the season, and the fact that we've got the 2 best away records in the league makes it quite interesting as well. It almost makes you feel like you might be favouring the away side in both the legs on this occasion, but I'm going to go with Swindon Town to make it to Wembley, much like Chris has said. And that concludes the League 2 playoff preview. Thank you very much for listening. In terms of the ties, we've got a very quick turnaround till they get going. We have the first tie on Saturday evening, Mansfield Town against Northampton Town at Field Mill. Swindon Town host Port Vale the following Sunday lunchtime. We then have Northampton Town against Mansfield Town on Wednesday the 18th, and Port Vale Swindon Town on Thursday the 19th. What a set of ties that's going to be, boys.
Yeah,
what a set.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely looking forward to it. My thanks to all 3 of you for your contributions with this.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you very much as well to the guests who provided insight on this preview as well. And we will dive through this in upcoming podcast episodes. So until then, goodbye.